It is my opinion that this fight with the Saudis is not a legal matter. It's not a political matter. It is an international diplomatic incident. And in fact, I put it to you, it goes to our national security and the integrity of our sovereign country. Joining me today from Ottawa, live from our studio there, is former CSIS officer David Harris, who is an expert on matters of international affairs. And I thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Ezra. A pleasure.
Now, you've been following this, David, and would you agree with my thesis that this is not some garden variety corporate dispute? Because one of the parties, that is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, is a massive terrorist financing, misogynistic dictatorship, and the other party is a Canadian company. It's not even a fair fight.
That's precisely correct, and you're right. It's got to be elevated to the prime ministerial level, and no nonsense. This is intervention in the independent sovereign activity of a liberal democratic nation, namely Canada. We've seen this kind of pattern before with Saudi and Saudi front groups throughout North America, and it reflects a sustained effort using various means of suppression to have their own extremist message prevail here in Canada and elsewhere.
David, I appreciate you talking about that, and I wanted to get you on the record about that, but I am going to switch subject. I just, you have the expertise in international affairs, and with your former CSIS work, I wanted to get you on the record. Because you're just the latest voice calling for the Prime Minister to intervene. But we did invite you to talk about another subject today, and I'd like to proceed to that, even though this Saudi thing has got my goat, David. I want to talk about news that comes that when the lineup is long at the arrivals gate in our airports, sometimes people who were tagged for a secondary search or screening are hustled right through. News comes, our own Toronto Sun, Tom Godfrey, broke the story that sometimes when it's just a long lineup, people who were pulled out of the line for a secondary search or whisked through. What do you make of this?
I think it's unbelievable. It's absolutely extraordinary. You don't have security measures, processes, and so on at airports in order to simply ignore them because there may be some sort of inconvenience, real or imagined. Look, the very fact that you had 3 veteran, experienced CBSA people who are known for their discipline in this kind of organization, going public, as they have done through Mr. Godfrey, is indicative of itself of grave malaise. We have to ensure that the broader discipline that's needed in this kind of activity, especially in our airports, is sustained.
You know, David, what's frustrating to me, I fly too much, and I fly from Toronto to Calgary, and I'm a frequent flyer, and I'm not from a foreign country, yada, yada. I have to go through what I call security theater. Like, it's this whole show just to make me think that I'm a Canadian citizen. I have to go through this kabuki dance of fake security, but people who are coming in from foreign countries, some of whom which are hostile, many of whom are not citizens, they're rushed through. To me, it shows, that we're focused on the wrong things. My view is, stop making us show you our toothpaste and our tweezers domestically and put more resources on bad guys coming into the country. What do you think of that theory?
Well, I differ a little bit with you. I don't embrace the terror theater interpretation, although I can understand some of the basis for feeling that way. I think, though, what we have here is something in the current situation that is completely unacceptable, and it's very revealing and troubling that there seems to be this tendency, when people are allowed to pass through on the basis described, to nullify, as has been reported, the declaration cards that would otherwise have been submitted and have been processed by CBSA of those people allowed to go free. That means that the authorities presumably have very limited records of what these people are about, what they had claimed or declared, and therefore the government at large, the authorities, are going to be very limited in their ability to follow up, including to take matters to court if that should be necessary. This is absolutely contrary to every fundamental principle of record keeping and intelligence gathering and maintenance that we know.
That's a great point. I mean, if we're not even keeping records, we don't know who's come and gone from what strange countries that may be involved with terrorism. You know, I got a question for you, and it's what lessons the other side is taking. I mean, I hope our side says, oh boy, we better fix this, put some more staff on it. But the other side is always watching, and I think they're saying, aha, So we know now if we can land from Pakistan or Sudan or some rough country, if we can land at the same time of a bunch of other planes, and if we can just get a really big lineup going on, that's the time to come to Canada, because that's the time that they basically say, oh, forget about it, go through this whole security thing, it's just a waste of time. Aren't we basically telegraphing to the bad guys our weak spots?
You couldn't be more right. We know that the enemy of various descriptions is constantly undertaking reconnaissance and exploration around and about our aircraft, on our aircraft, in these kinds of airport situations and so on. So they're making evaluations, and some of them are probabilistic. They're trying to work out the chances of being able to get through the various barriers and checks and filters. This is an object lesson to them in the kind of latitude that they will have coming through this airport and similar airports.
David Harris here with the firm called Insignis. Tell me, if you had one piece of advice to give to the government, whether it's the border security folks or the transportation folks, what one thing would you encourage this government to do to fix things?
There are established processes available. Use them.
So so basically, translation, just follow the rules, even if it means there's a long lineup. Is that what you're saying?
That's absolutely it. No exceptions. We've got to deal with this in a methodical, sensible way, the way that has been prescribed by law and regulation.
David Harris of Insignis Research, formerly with CSIS, I very much appreciate your sober second thought on this crazy news we have. And hey, thanks for chiming in on the Saudi threat, too.